Have you ever felt trapped in a place where there is simply no way out? Imagine arriving at a rented room, hoping only to rest, and finding locked doors, blocked windows. The silence of the night turns into a stifled scream inside you. This is the story of someone who lived a real nightmare, a place where the shadows hide secrets as old as fear, and where escape seems impossible. Get ready, because what I'm about to tell you is not just a story, it's a warning. And as you listen, you will feel that uneasiness growing in your chest, the same one that took over those who were trapped in that dark room. Are you ready to find out what happens when freedom becomes a labyrinth of terror? I never imagined that a simple trip could turn into such a real nightmare. It all started when I decided to rent a room through Airbnb, looking for a cheap and quiet place to rest after exhausting weeks at work. The promise seemed perfect. A cozy room in an old house with that vintage charm, located in a calm neighborhood. However, something about that place felt strange from the very first moment, a discomfort I couldn't explain at the time. I arrived late afternoon, carrying my suitcase and the accumulated tiredness, eager to finally relax. The lady who owned the house, a seemingly kind elderly woman, showed me the room and left shortly after, telling me to feel at home. At first, everything seemed normal. The room had a bed, an old wardrobe, and a small table. But when I looked at the window, something caught my attention. It was boarded up with thick planks, as if someone had put them there to prevent passage. I found it odd, but didn't question it much. Maybe it was to keep out the cold or some other reason I couldn't understand. Later, while unpacking, I noticed the door had a lock on the inside that looked different from normal. It wasn't just an ordinary doorknob. There was an extra heavy latch that I hadn't seen anywhere else in the house. An uncomfortable feeling started growing inside me, a silent doubt, almost imperceptible but present. I tried to push these thoughts away, thinking my mind was tired and creating ghosts where there were none. That night, before sleeping, I still felt uneasy. Something about that room didn't fit right. The silence was heavy, suffocating, and the few sounds from the house seemed too distant, as if I were isolated in my own world. I lay in bed trying to relax, but the restlessness didn't let me. I began noticing details I hadn't seen before. The walls were dirty and worn. There were strange marks near the floor, almost like scratches. The air felt heavy, as if something had left an invisible presence in that environment. Suddenly I heard a noise coming from the door, a muffled sound like someone fiddling with the doorknob. My heart raced, and my breathing became shallow. I tried to calm my mind and convince myself it was just my imagination. But the feeling that I wasn't alone in that room was too strong to ignore. Fear began to infiltrate every thought, like a shadow slowly spreading. Later, I decided to get up for some water, and when I tried to open the door, I realized something terrifying. The extra locks were closed from the inside. I couldn't open it. I tried every way, pulling, pushing, but it seemed like the door was sealed against me. The cold reality hit me. I was trapped in that room, with no easy way out. Anxiety took over, and claustrophobia began to squeeze my chest like an invisible hand. I thought about screaming for help, but the silence in the place was immense, and I wasn't sure if anyone would hear me. My phone was on silent mode, and the internet signal was weak, making communication difficult. Desperation grew, mixed with disbelief at being in such an absurd situation. Why would someone lock a guest's room? Why was the window boarded up? My mind searched for answers but found only questions. The night was torture. Time seemed to stop. Every sound was amplified, the creak of the floor, the wind hitting the locked windows, maybe even distant footsteps in the house. I curled up in bed trying to calm down, but fear wouldn't let me. It felt like being in a captivity, trapped in a place that shouldn't trap me. I started searching on my phone for information about the address, the owner, and any possible stories related to the house. To my horror, I found reports of disappearances and accounts of guests who never left. My mind twisted. I was in real danger, and the feeling that something horrible could happen at any moment was suffocating. Adrenaline pushed me to find a way out, but it seemed the place conspired to keep me there. Fear became a constant presence, like an invisible being watching my every move. The dawn brought false hope, but the reality remained. I was trapped, vulnerable, and alone in that room. Anguish took hold, and I knew I'd have to find the strength to face that terror before it was too late. The night was still dark when I finally managed to calm myself enough to think clearly. The reality of the situation was weighing heavier by the minute. I was trapped in that room, with the extra locks that wouldn't let me leave, the window boarded up, and an eerie silence that seemed to swallow everything around me. It wasn't just a strange room. There was something very wrong about that place. A cold feeling crawled up my spine as if the environment itself was alive, watching my every move with invisible eyes. Sitting on the bed, phone in hand, I decided I needed to understand where I had gotten myself into. I started typing the house's address into Google, hoping to find something that would explain this sense of danger. That's when I found old reports, news articles, and forum discussions talking about that very address. Previous guests had mysteriously disappeared. Others described similar situations to mine. Locked doors, boarded windows, the impossibility of leaving the room. An intense chill took over my body as I read the horrible stories. One woman said she heard screams for help coming from that very room, but when she sought help, no one found anything. A man reported that when he tried to leave the house, he was caught by a strange group who kept him confined for days. Slowly, everything made sense, and the cruel reality I feared began to reveal itself. That room was not just strange, it was a true captivity, a place where people were held prisoner, and maybe, at that moment, I was living the same fate. My breathing became heavy, and an immense weight fell on my chest. The certainty that I wasn't there by accident, that something or someone didn't want me to leave, completely overwhelmed me. I looked again at the door, the heavy locks keeping me from opening it, the boards on the window isolating me from the outside world. It was as if the room was a trap, a place designed to imprison and silence. The feeling of imminent danger began to invade my mind. I wondered how I could escape, who could be behind that silent prison, and what would happen if I didn't get out in time. Desperation grew, mixed with a strange determination not to let fear win. I needed to find a way out, a flaw in that barrier keeping me there. My mind raced, searching for any solution, any detail I might have overlooked. Meanwhile, the silence in the house seemed to deepen even more. Minutes passed like hours, and every small sound grew terrifyingly loud. I started hearing noises I hadn't noticed before. Slow footsteps upstairs, muffled creaks in the walls, an almost imperceptible whisper that seemed to call my name. My body shivered at every sound, but I couldn't let panic take over. Then, something caught my attention on the wall opposite the bed. A small space behind a piece of furniture seemed to hide something. Carefully, I approached and moved the heavy wardrobe resting there. Behind it I discovered a tiny door, almost imperceptible, with old rusty hinges. My heart raced. I knew that there might be the key to the mystery, to my freedom, or maybe to an even greater horror. I opened the door with effort, revealing a narrow staircase leading down to a dark basement. The air rising was cold and damp, carrying the smell of mold and something harder to identify, a mix of iron and decay. I descended slowly, using my phone's light to guide the way, each step echoing in that deep darkness. At the bottom of the basement, I found abandoned personal belongings, dirty and crumpled clothes, traces of old furniture, and, horrifyingly, rusty chains attached to the walls. My stomach twisted. It was impossible to deny. That place had been a real captivity. People had been held there, deprived of freedom, condemned to isolation and fear. I felt a presence behind me, a quick shadow, moving at the corner of my eye. I turned quickly, but there was no one there. Silence returned, heavier and more threatening than ever. Anguish grew, and the feeling that something very wrong was about to happen completely took over me. I ran back to the room, locking the door, behind me with the key on the inside, trying to convince myself I was safe, at least for now. But the fear had already rooted itself in me, a dark seed growing every second. I wasn't just a guest in that house. I was prey. And something told me that night would be decisive. Either I would find a way to escape, or I would become another, victim of that room's macabre past. The clock seemed to mock my situation, marking each second like a step toward an uncertain fate. I needed courage, needed to keep my mind clear and my heart strong. The fight for my freedom was only beginning, and I couldn't falter.